Hi. There are no great limits to growth because there are no limits of human intelligence, imagination, and wonder. The growth that we as humans have achieved is truly incredible, and the growth we still can achieve is limitless. The biggest leaps of this growth happen through using this human intelligence via innovation. Innovations that have changed our lives tremendously and catalyzed the pace of that growth. Being a small business or a new business in this new norm is really challenging. You have to be in a continuous state of expansion, not just to thrive, but even to survive. This continuous expansion can only be achieved by looking beyond your borders and exploring going global. Throughout modern history, we've witnessed many small businesses do that and go global. However, this journey used to take them decades. If we look at Procter & Gamble when they first were established in 1837, it took them 100 years to only expand to the UK and another 50 years to reach global presence in more than 50 countries. Moving on to the 20th century, when Toyota took 30 years from its foundation in 1933 to opening its first global office in the US. Fast forward to 2013, with all the technology and innovation, Uber has successfully achieved global presence in more than 40 countries within just 4 years of its foundation. Procter & Gamble, Toyota, and countless others were not fortunate enough to have had technology when they first started. Even though they had different set of challenges to navigate, it's still true to highlight how a big overall technology has played in accelerating the company's abilities to go global. In our panel today, we will be discussing how can companies go global. With me are representatives from different VC sectors, starting with my right, and with more than $2.7 billion in AUM, 500 Global is a multi-stage venture capital firm that has backed 49 unicorns around the world, including Canva, Grab, Bukalapak, and GitLab. Welcome, Courtney Powell.
Thank you.
I'll go with Badr. Next, we have Sanabil Investments, financial investment company wholly owned by PIF, and with annual commitment of more than $2 billion into private investments globally. My colleague, Badr Al-Maner, heading direct investments. The reason I wanted to keep the founders to the end, because we have a very amazing contrast between the two founders. We have with us Umesh Sajdev, who's the co-founder and CEO of Unifor, a SaaS company focused on conversational AI and automation across the enterprise. Umesh has started in Chennai, India, and expanded to more than 700 employees in the US, Europe, and Asia. Presenting the perfect expansion contrast, we look at Mohammed. Mohammed Al-Madani is the CEO and co-founder of Classera. Classera has done the exactly opposite trip in expansion. They started in Silicon Valley while targeting the emerging markets. Classera is an edtech company that has grown into the largest edtech company in MENA and other emerging markets, educating millions in more than 30 countries. Welcome all, and thank you for being here. Today we'll cover 3 themes around going global: the why, the how, and the what. So why do companies go global? Let me start with you, Umesh. Earlier this year, you announced your $400 million Series E round, which brought up your valuation to $2.5 billion. You cited using this round to expand globally, specifically in North America, Europe, and Asia. Umesh, why go global?
Well, first of all, Sarah, it's great to be on this panel with all of you, and great to be in this conference. What a great setting this is in Riyadh. This is my first trip to Riyadh. I'm really enjoying it.
Welcome to Sarah.
Thank you. Like you said, by the time we raised our Series E and we announced it in March of this year, Unifor was already 14 years old as a company. Like you said, we founded ourselves in India, but today the company is headquartered in Palo Alto in Silicon Valley in California. We do business in 17 countries. We have employees in most of those countries. We have customers in most of those countries. And so much before this round of financing, we had made the strategic call of becoming a global business. Now, why go global, you ask? Many factors led to it, but in our case, the fact that we started as a conversational AI company focusing on large enterprise accounts from India. Our home market at the time, India, doesn't provide a very deep market opportunity for enterprise SaaS businesses in many sectors, including ours. And so it's quite natural for companies that are founded out of India to look for bigger markets in North America, in Europe, etc. So our journey began with starting to expand in the Middle East, Southeast Asia, and when I moved to the US and moved the headquarter of the company, North America today does about 65% of our revenue. We are just about beginning our expansion in Europe. We are yet to expand in many other parts of the world, including South Africa, Latin America. But for us, it was the search of getting deeper market access in many different parts of the world that took us global in the early years.
Thank you very much, Omesh. Muhammad, I think we're hearing rumors that you're about to close your Series A round. Is congratulations in order?
Yeah, you are about to hear some interesting news, hopefully, within this conference.
Inshallah. You've declared using this round to expand into other emerging markets like Africa and APAC. Your expansion story, as we discussed, is unusual, where you started in the US while targeting emerging markets. What made you what triggered that decision, and how competitive are emerging markets for you?
So again, I would love to thank you all for this, session. It's an honor to be with you here. And as you said, it's maybe an interesting twist, from the story. We started in the U.S. in a developed market with the vision to go and focus on emerging markets. And why we took that route? We just wanted to learn from the best. So we started actually somewhere in the U.S. Then we moved to Silicon Valley just to learn and get up to date to what is the latest technology, how we should tackle this problem. Because what we wanted to impact is the engagement in learning. We thought engagement with the existing e-learning solutions is not how it's supposed to be. So we wanted to solve that using inspiration, personalization, and collaboration. And we start doing that by having gamification to do the inspiration, AI to do the personalization, social learning to get the collaboration aspect, all to boost the engagement. And that led to as of last year, Coursera scored had one of the highest engagement metric in e-learning industry globally. So going back to your question from the US and Silicon Valley did raise the bar, and so when we went to focus emerging market, we already had an advantage. We thought about our technology differently, about there was experience, about many other things, and that gave us an advantage over many of the other competition who were thinking local. So that's was a first by itself. And the positioning actually did help us a lot. Maybe we did not intend so, but coming from Silicon Valley to emerging market actually did help us a lot. And we did something interesting, how to be the biggest tech company in MENA and Africa as a bootstrap. And this funding round you were talking about that we're about to announce is our first round ever. So that's the passion, and also the impact is the last part of the answer. Because we think in education, emerging markets needs it even more. So we thought we want to do a much bigger impact in this part of the world.
Thank you, Mohammed. Shifting our attention now to the two VCs with us in the panel. Courtney, you get thousands of proposals at your door annually, if not even quarterly. What made you take a decision to say this company has the ability to grow and maybe even be the next unicorn?
Yes. I mean, it's fascinating having seen since 500 began in a 2010, 2011 timeline, the idea of investing even outside of Menlo Park into San Francisco was quite controversial. Today, our thesis is stronger than ever in the sense that we know that there are companies started all over the world who have the opportunity to scale globally. And there's a lot of financial upside in being able to identify those companies, those opportunities as early as possible, and then be a part of that global journey. So we're quite excited to hear more about Clasera's story as things unfold here. But there's tremendous opportunity to find companies and to find founders who believe that they can go global from the outset. And part of our experience, having seen these thousands of deals and invested in thousands of companies, is you're able to identify, some of the models that with some, of course, nuance and further innovation may work in multiple markets.
That's why you're always jet setting around the world. It's very difficult.
This is
to
why I
work
live in an
with
airplane. That's right.
Badr, as a Saudi investor, what attracts you to local companies? Do you think they are targeting the right questions when they think about global? Do they even are targeting the correct market to expand to?
So I'm going to maybe expand this a little bit and talk about regional, so not just Saudi. I think regional companies here, especially the ones that start in the three major economies, have it be Saudi, UAE, or Egypt, actually have an advantage in being able to establish themselves in a large economy with a large customer base before thinking even of going global. I actually think there are certain business models where you can create multi-billion-dollar businesses by just being local, not even going global. You see this a lot happening now in consumer-facing businesses and fintech. I'll give two examples. Fawri in Egypt and Jahaz in Saudi Arabia. Both of them are now multi-billion-dollar public companies, and they have zero presence outside their local market. But I think going back to what do we look for when we talk to Saudi companies or regional companies that think global, it really depends on three things. And I think this is more of how founders should think about that global expansion. First is, or maybe the three things are, what's the market size, what's your business model, and do you have the right people to execute? So on market size, a lot of the work that we do is when someone says we want to go global is, well, which of the markets around you that are achievable, that you can penetrate, and then how big are these markets? Can they sustain a $100 million business, a billion, a $10 billion business? Can they sustain a competitive landscape of multiple businesses doing what that founder of that company is doing? I think one aspect when you're looking at multiple companies or multiple regions is also we need to understand what do you need to penetrate or dominate to reach that scale. So let's say $1 billion. Let's take the region as an example. Do you need to dominate Saudi? Or do you need to dominate Saudi plus GCC? Or do you need to do Saudi, GCC, and Egypt and dominate these markets to reach that scale? Each has opportunities and each has very different risks. These markets are, even though they look from the outside homogeneous, they're not. There are very local differences between them, market structures on that founders need to look deeply at. And that's something that we take into consideration when we underwrite these expansion plans. I think on business model, really, I think the first question is the problem you're trying to solve global or at least regional? Does it fix an issue that is happening in multiple markets, or is it very local? So take an example, someone with an idea of automating tax filing with a Saudi tax service for Saudi companies. That's a very specific problem to fix, right? And it's not really scalable beyond the Saudi use case. So that's one thing. What's the problem and is it global? The other is, what's your business model? There are certain business models that are much easier to scale globally than others. Software is, given the market structure, it's very easy to scale compared to others. Local marketplaces are very hard to scale beyond your local marketplace. So that's kind of the contracts you have to look at. I think the last one is probably people, and I think it's the most important thing. So I spend a lot of time with founders making sure that they understand the markets that they're trying to expand into. You cannot use the same playbook in Saudi to expand even to the UAE or to Egypt. So if we're talking about India or talking about Europe or anything beyond that, it's a totally different market, totally different players, regulations. So we need to understand that you understand these issues and understand how the management team is trying to expand. So kind of dig deeper into that playbook, those expansion plans, really also assess the management team and do they have the capabilities and the deep talent pool to expand beyond their local market. We typically help our portfolio companies even in identifying these candidates if they're kind of trying to go beyond that. So I think these three main buckets are what for us kind of tells us is this company ready or not to go global or needs to work more on the local market.
Thank you, Badr. Very nice insight from everyone. So let's move now to the how. Courtney, what do you look for in terms of your ideal go-to-market strategy? Is it companies that have, again, a very specific playbook on expansion? Or companies that are targeting different geographies at once? Or simply achieving success in their local market?
And I think it depends a lot on a couple of things. One, the stage that we're investing in, because if you're investing in a seed stage deal, they may not yet have the fully formed playbook that's going to, be available to assess. It's also going to depend a lot on the market that they're playing in, the industry as they're playing in as well. So I think what is really critical is to have a founder at the earliest stage who is aware of what they do not know. I think you have wonderful examples across tech of people who have created entirely new markets, which is wonderful to see, huge upside from an investor perspective, but they knew that they needed some sort of augmentation early on when they wished to expand to a new market, to exactly your point, to be able to understand the difference between delivering a package in the United States versus delivering a package here in Riyadh or in Egypt, which is a completely different ballgame, as we all know. So I think there's a level of self-awareness, team awareness that's really critical, in addition to, obviously, if you can back experienced teams who have gone through multiple rodeos, if you will, then that's always a plus. But you also need to be open to those market makers who are going to bring the truly game-changing companies around the world. So not a clear answer, but I think that's the nature of investing multiple stages, multiple geographies, and multiple segments.
Thank you, Courtney. So we've heard from you, like specifically on early stage. Back to you, Badr. So you talked about those three buckets: business model, problem, market size, and talent. If we think about companies going global, there are multiple routes. They can use merger and acquisition, partnerships, or merely just use organic expansion. From your thoughts, what are the benefits and challenges for each of these routes?
So I think short answer, which one do you use? Short answer is it depends. Depends on the situation. Maybe I'll go further into when do we kind of cheer for an M&A or for a partnership rather than organic growth. So on M&A, and Umesh, I know we've worked together on a few of those M&As on Unifor. So Umesh, for example, has used M&A in a great way to expand the product suite of the company. And that just completely changed the addressable market that the company can go after. So that was kind of an M&A that adds a lot of value to the business beyond just what you're acquiring, but actually even to the story of the business and whatnot. M&A could be and taking out your second competitor. That's something that one of our portfolio company, Foodix, did when they acquired POS Rocket, which was the second largest cloud POS solution in the Middle East, and consolidated the market and expanded into new geographies. That's really the other one. The last one is probably acquiring a team. You're thinking of going to a new geography. You don't really know a lot about it. One way for you to go and acquire a very small business and just acquire that team and talent can actually make a company breakthrough into that market. That's another way. But I think overall, for M&As to work, I think the most important equation here is that 1 + 1 has to always equal more than 2. Cannot equal 2, cannot equal less. So that's on M&A. I think the biggest challenge in M&A is not really doing the deal, is not really getting a valuation or pricing it or anything. It's actually what happens after that. We've been through that experience with Unifor. It was very successful, alhamdulillah. But I think founders need to spend a lot of time on planning how they're going to integrate that business that they're acquiring. That integration aspect is not a small feat. It's very complicated. There are culture clashes. We're talking about type A personalities. Trying to figure out who's going to report to who and who's going to do what. It's not easy. It's a very delicate process. A lot of effort has to be put into it. Have to be communication, people skill, managing the whole thing to make it as smooth as possible. So really, that's the biggest challenge I think in M&A. On partnerships, I think partnerships is one of the greatest way for you to expand globally because you don't need to commit as much capital or even resources to go global. So you can test out the waters in that market, make sure, is it working for me, is it not, before you kind of commit. So a lot of businesses, for example, come to Saudi with partnerships, right? And once they've secured a few customers, that's going to expand into a satellite office and then into a regional office and whatnot. So it's a natural progression of expanding globally. But I think one aspect on partnership is you don't really control the interaction with the customer, nor the experience. And if you don't select the right partner, things can go wrong. Founders and management need to focus a lot on what's the selection criteria and really spend the time and effort in selecting those partners, especially in markets that are core to their expansion plans. Going back to organic growth, organic growth is really, you're going to control the process, you're going to control the experience. You need to make sure that you have the right people and all of that. It's a bit more complex, takes longer time. Sometimes if you want to jumpstart that growth, probably go with one of the other routes. But you need to do it the right way.
So merger and acquisition partnership is synergy, but more capital and shorter time. When you go to organic growth, then you need more time and more capital.
Yes.
Thank you, Badr. So moving on to the founder side of the room, and we want to hear your experience. So first, I'm going to ask Clasera and then Unifor. Give us your top 3 strategies that you did with your startup and that helped you to achieve that growth.
Okay, very interesting discussion, and sharing this experience is, it has many, of course, stories behind the back. But as Badr summarized, it is, these 3 tactics are the most used, between the acquisition, partnership, and organic growth. And of course, we wouldn't say there is just one way to do it. It's normally a combination of 2 and sometimes 3. So we have done mainly the other 2. We focused a lot into partnership. So it's once you secure a good partnership, you can scale much faster than, of course, doing organic. We wouldn't recommend someone going organic the first time because it always gives you the expertise into what is there in the market. So we combine even partnership. It is sophisticated where we try to work with both global partners and local partners. It's a combination of both. So for example, in our case, we partner very strongly with Microsoft and HP, and we align their interest with our interests, and that's what you want to do when you go with those, whatever partner or global or local partner. You have to first focus into aligning their interests. What's in it for them? What you have. So we created a partnership program. We, one from the multinational, came to design the program for us from Intel, and it was super great. We start deepening that partnership to the level that HP created a co-branded solution called HP Class Easy by Clasera. So it's in it for them now to co-branding, with this co-branding to go over these countries. And once we have a critical mass, then we start going and hiring our own people on the ground. So we start with this global partnership, then we bring the local partners. They work together, some of them, as resellers. Then we bring our own team to coordinate the effort and create leads. And there's 3 main strategies in the playbook that you have to do whenever you're going to these new markets. So you first have to do a product market fit. And that's very important because, as said, each market is different. Even some neighboring countries, when we started before going to other countries outside MENA, even go to a country like Egypt and going to a country like Morocco, is completely different. So you have to do a product market fit. You have to do a business model market fit. So which include the pricing, the way you sell it is completely different. Sometimes something is appealing in one country, it doesn't work in another country. The third is a marketing market fit. So you have to tailor the marketing material. We even between the Arabic countries we worked. So we were using Arabic, but you know, the way how you use it in Tunisia is different from using it in UAE. So we had to localize even when you go to a similar culture. Not to mention, of course, when we went to India or to Malaysia and some of those other 30 countries. So all these tactic of product market fit, business model market fit, and the market fit is a very important ingredient to success and to enable your partners, whether the global or the local, to succeed in their mission into advancing, you know, your product. Then, of course, the acquisition, we haven't done any of those. Maybe we'll work on it. But again, a faster way, once the time is right, is to focus into, to do some jump into certain markets. It can shorten the time. So combination is, I think is a tactic.
Thank you very much, Mohammed. Omesh, your 3 top strategies.
So, you know, first let's recognize the complexity that comes with going global earlier. You gave the examples of how Uber is now, you know, had gone global much faster than Toyota or Procter and Gamble. But it's really important for an early founder to recognize if that's a strategy they want to employ, the complexity that it'll bring. First of all, you will need to spread out your team globally because you need to have local understanding in different parts of the world. And how do you build culture when your leadership team is spread around the world and you're not getting in a room to strategize, because startups are all about quickly whiteboarding a problem and moving on. So building and maintaining culture is a huge challenge when early stage companies go global. In our case, we've done 4 acquisitions and we went to 17 countries on our path to 100 million of ARR. And now we've crossed that and we're moving on. What that did for us is we now have a full-time tax team that worries about our intellectual property in different parts of the world because each jurisdiction treats that differently. We have a full-time team that thinks about local HR issues. In some countries, it's our own employees. We can have them on our payroll because we have local entities. In some cases, it's POEs because that's an easier way to do business. And then what you do with stock options in those cases. And so what it does is it causes distraction, right? You're taking your part of your energy and worrying about all these issues when in the early stage you could be focused on one market. On the flip side, if you embrace the complexity and you plan for it, what it does is, even at 100 million ARR, we are growing faster than any of our peers in our industry. Our official growth target is 90% year on year at this scale, and we are ahead of plan at this point, right? The other thing it did is, as COVID occurred, or as recently we've seen the US market go through some trouble, not all behave the same way, right? So when US is slowing down, Asia sometimes isn't, or Europe is at a different pace than different parts of the world, so you can even out your quarters because you've spread out your bets globally. So it's really important to understand the trade-offs. Like Badr said, you can build a multi-billion-dollar business just focused on one big market, or you can do it with multiple markets. It's just a choice. To do that, what we've had to do is, like I said, my co-founder lives in Singapore, runs our Asia business. I live in Silicon Valley, and it's 2 of us. Our leadership team is spread out, our executive leadership team. And once again, we've had to brace this complexity. We've had to overcome the fact that we are not physically together. We speak to each other multiple times a day, on phone calls, etc. So we over-communicate. We have a full-time integration team, not just corporate development. Corporate development scouts for M&A opportunities. Like I said, we've done 4 so far. But we have an equally potent integrations team that reports once again to a executive leader in the company. Because once that acquisition is done, it's like the sales process. The salespeople bring in the asset. Now somebody has to do the hard work of making it work. And so having a full-time integration team has worked for us. Really understanding different cultures. You know, a place like Japan, there are some markets where partnerships are not sufficient. You have to go all in. For example, a company that wasn't born in the US and wants to make US a key market, it's really important for probably the CEO to live in the US because it's such a big part of your strategy, product market fit. Only the CEO can make quick calls. Japan is one such market where you need both. You can't do business without partnership. We have partnership with NEC and NTT, 2 of the biggest software companies, hardware companies in the market. At the same time, we have one of our largest headcounts outside of US and India in Japan, because we had to learn the hard way that it's not enough that you have a sales team in Japan. For the Japanese market, the product needs to be built in Japan. And we were like, well, the product's already built in Silicon Valley. We're just localizing it, adding the language, and make it work. No, it needs to be developed by Japanese engineers, because Silicon Valley engineers or Indian engineers don't understand that market. Doing business in the Middle East is very different, right? The culture nuance, whether you do it through partners or direct, the buyer behavior is very different from a UK or US in UAE, and so on and so forth. So investing the time, giving the respect to each market, what it deserves. If it's expansion through M&A, giving the respect to the integration process. If it's expansion through organic means, then the easiest thing would be your sales leader would say, oh, I can find a deal today in France because I need to meet my quota. But to pull them back and say, no, before we do a deal, we need to have the basic minimum infrastructure available. Can we hire people? Can we support that customer once a deal is done? In our case, we run an AI software company, so language support, speech recognition, natural language processing, we need to have that beforehand we start selling in a given market. So being prepared and then going in, whether through partner or direct, it's some of those things, just being thoughtful and going all in. If you've decided to embrace the complexity of going global, it does pay off, but it takes a lot more hard work to do it sub 100 million of recurring revenue.
Thank you, Amesh. So it's all about diversification, tailoring each market, the route to each market. Thank you very much. So to our final part of the panel, the challenges of going global. Let me start with you, Badr. Given Sanabil's diverse portfolio of MENA, local companies, and global companies, how do you help your local portfolio companies explore going global and your international companies explore Saudi and the region as well?
Definitely. So I think we at Sanabil really sit at a very interesting and very unique place where, today we've built and continue to build strong relationships with blue chip and emerging investors and founders around the globe. But also on the other side, we have become and will continue to be a significant participant in the region, not just the local, I think the regional VC ecosystem. With your efforts on the, and then our partnership with 500 on the accelerator, I know that's a first step. And also our efforts on the direct and kind of investing in the local companies and helping them out to become regional and global. I think what we do for our local portfolio companies is being in that kind of situation and having that access. We always kind of put them in front of our partners that we've created these relationships with, and try to make sure that that next check coming into that business is actually international. And we've been successful. In this year, Foodex raised their Series C, led by Process and participation in Sequoia India. Both of them were the first tickets they've come, and they were significant tickets coming into Saudi Arabia. And everyone in Sanabil was very proud of that. Ahmed, I think, is also very proud. Ahmed Zaini, who's the friend and the founder of CEO of Foodex. And we just announced Tamara, which is also backed by Checkout and also attracted the participation of Kotu. So I think this is just the start, right? This is the start, and we hear it from our partners and we hear it from our founders. Our international partners see us as someone they can rely on and trust when they're looking at the region. It's a new region. A lot of them do not have the experience to understand the intricacies of this region, so they rely on us on that, which takes out some of that risk of coming into a new region. So them actually expanding globally, right? I think on the help that we provide also to our international founders. So Umesh, for example, it's a lot similar. So we do introduce Umesh and Unifor to our partners who they might not have that interaction with. But a lot of our effort is actually on figuring out how can they expand in the region. So when Unifor tells us, guys, we're interested in the Middle East, we want to explore this, we'll sit, and we've done that with Umesh and his team. Think about the strategy, what's the market setup, who are the participants. So break it down, right? And then also make the introductions to customers, to partners,
Talent.
partnerships, talent, regulators in multiple jurisdictions. A lot of that happens when they're trying just to figure out what they want to do and how should they set up. So we've done that, and we'll continue to do that. And I think we're just starting, and I'm really very excited to see what happens in the next few years.
Inshallah. Thank you, Badr. Umesh, you've done 5 fundraisers throughout the life of Unifor. I'm sure each one of these fundraisers came with a different set of challenges. Can you talk to us about your top challenge and how did you overcome it?
Well, if I go into each one, we'll need a much longer panel, Sarah. So what I'll focus on is, let me generalize the journey of the last 14 years of building Unifor into a unicorn. The key challenge at each stage of the business, which has been good learning for me as a founder, my leadership team, is around people, right? Software business is the biggest asset we have. We don't have factories, we don't have land. Our biggest asset are people. And when a company grows at 90, 100% or beyond, the average tenure of an executive leader in that company is 18 months. Let that sink in, which means in every 18 months, the entire leadership team is getting refreshed. Your sales leader stays appropriate, your marketing leader stays appropriate. When you're sub 10 million of revenue, you bring in people who can take you from 10, 20, 30. You cross that milestone, your big goal becomes, I want to get to 7,500. When you get to 100, you're now thinking, I want to go public. And so at each stage, the type of talent you need to bring into the company is unique. And so the ability to attract that right type of talent, to groom them, and also replace at the right time. That's one of the biggest challenges that most companies face. Because talent out there is the biggest war, right? Google and Amazon want the same type of people that we want, and they have far more resources than even after the fundraise we've done. The next one is building and maintaining culture. Like I said, being a global company, 800 people, many different countries where our people are. And so in a startup, it's really important to bring everyone together. COVID occurs, you want to bring everyone in a room and say, here's what we're going to do, guys. Things are different now, but you don't have that opportunity. Everyone's spread out. We raise a big round, you want everyone to celebrate together. You can't do that. And then as soon as we raise the round, the economy tanked in the US, so you want to put the brakes. How do you make rapid changes when the company's growing, everyone's remote, everyone's doing their own thing, a lot of people are new, right? They've just come in from different companies, they don't have the muscle memory of building Unifor. So building and maintaining culture. And on top of that, we just discussed, if M&A occurs, all of a sudden in a 700 people company, another 100 people come from an acquired organization which probably had its own culture nuance, and now you want to merge that culture into yours. And so that's, once again, a constant challenge, one that the CEO has to lead from the front. It is everyone's job, but the CEO has to set the tone and make culture the biggest priority. And there's, making sure as you grow, as things scale, just always doing the right thing. Because, people have goals, people have targets. As things go out of control, guardrails become weaker. To make sure that the company, no matter how fast it's growing, geographically, revenue-wise, that the guardrails, the governance always remains strong. So in general, irrespective of the stage, I found talent, culture, and governance to be the recurring theme. It just, scale becomes bigger. Now I'm worried about how do I take my company from 100 million to a billion. But it's, again, what kind of people do I need for that? What kind of culture will take us there? And how do I maintain the governance and always doing the right thing?
Thank you. It's interesting to hear about talent because it's the same challenges we're facing here with our local startups. Courtney, you've participated in many accelerator programs globally. You've invested in MENA region companies, Saudi companies, and other companies. In your opinion, why haven't we seen so many MENA companies go global?
Yes, this is a question I've certainly been thinking a lot about over the last couple of years. I think whether we're speaking about the Middle East or any of the regions that are still, accelerating, I think it oftentimes comes down to a few factors. First and foremost, I think it's really important that there's cultural awareness and acceptance of entrepreneurship. In many markets, the preference of our parents is still that we become doctors or lawyers or engineers. My mother still does not understand what it is that I do. And I know that that's a commonality across many countries. So there needs to be cultural acceptance to be able to be a risk taker and start a business when you could be working, in a more stable job. So first and foremost, that's something that I think is still shifting here in the Middle East and around many emerging markets. Secondly, I think that there has to be, as well, an educational component to this. So you need to have the technical talent. You need to be an engineer, be in DevOps, be in product, be in marketing, all of these things to be able to have the skill sets to even start a company and let alone scale it. That's really important. And then I think there's also just the capital landscape. I was just sitting next to Abdelia Elias, the co-founder of Careem, yesterday, and hearing his story of the company being founded in the region and there just not being any money available to invest into Careem, right? Today in the Middle East, it's changing rapidly, and will exceed in the Middle East the amount of venture capital that was invested in the previous year, and almost double from 3 years before that. So it's already accelerating really quickly. And then I would say my final point is that it's really important to have a mix of both local and global investors on your cap table. You need people who have seen the unicorns, the listings, and what that took. You need to be able to be a bridge to downstream capital, to purely commercial capital. You really need to be able to offer the advice, the connections, the mentorship, the therapy, to the founders who are going through that life cycle. So I think all of these ingredients are really required, in addition to, of course, a really healthy policy and regulatory framework as well. And as those things come online here in the Middle East more and more, I believe that we will begin to see more and more global companies created, and excited that Class Era is a great harbinger of what's to come.
And that's exciting time for entrepreneurs. We've never seen such foreign capital from VCs come to the country. So please, founders, go. Last but not least, Mohammed. You started your company in Silicon Valley, focusing on emerging markets. You're about to close your first ever funding round. You still want to expand into emerging markets. 2 questions for you. Going into emerging markets, it must be super challenging. So what can you tell us about your experience? And what's stopping you from taking Clasera to developed markets as well?
Okay, thank you. Great question. And before I even elaborate on that, maybe continue in this amazing talk about the region and what we saw. But I think we're seeing more and more entrepreneurs getting to change and their mentality. One of the biggest differences when they came from the U.S. and Silicon Valley to the region is the benchmark. So that's one of the issues before. But that the benchmark was, I want to be number 1 in my country, or maybe in the Gulf states if it is here. MENA is just a big thing. If you're sitting in California, you don't hear a founder saying, I want to be just the biggest company in California, even though California is as big as maybe several countries here in the MENA region. So, but it's always about the globe. So setting up, the expectation to we want to be global is a big, reason, and we're seeing that, hopefully changing in the region. And going to our story, so yes, we did start in the U.S. and we started selling in the U.S. and we were doing good, but I mean for us it was 2 things. So there is the passion part. So because learning, and we're impacting people, life and potential by, revolutionizing education and learning. So we thought doing that in emerging market is we're a lot more passionate to do so. So that's one part. For the business part, of course, it does come with challenges, but the flip side that you're also going to a blue ocean where you're going to so the challenging part is educating people. When we started, focusing on the region about 2015, yeah, to convince them about, technology and education in general is a subject by itself. So many were thinking about the subject as a luxury, not as a necessity.
Right.
But we were, hoping that, this mindset would change over time. And, luckily, even though it was a
COVID
hardship,
helped.
COVID came and it was, a game changer. It, many, decision makers, whether with governments, because we work with many ministries of education, whether in private, are thinking about technology education now as it's a necessity,
now.
not a luxury anymore. So still, so that one of the biggest challenges, and it's getting smoother, but and it is getting easier with time. Still, to understand, some of the challenges going into emerging markets is the infrastructure. That's of course, especially technology company, it's a big thing. But normally we try to overcome that by getting the governments involved, getting some of the telecom companies involved. So actually, for example, in Classera, we have a unit in our partnership team called Telecom Partnership. I mean, to literally go, and whenever we go to a new country, try to partner with the telecom companies, get them to be aligned with us, get them a skin in the game, and so that they can ease the process of the infrastructure, the internet connection, and of course many other techniques that we use, like the offline mode and many other things. We can go on and on, but emerging market is changing. We think it's a big future. It's both going global, right? So going global, you have the developed market or the emerging markets. We think we still, of course, work in some developed market, but the focus is there because much bigger markets. We think in the future, much bigger population, and hopefully we want to be after this historic investment, which we're gonna hopefully here in the last day of the FII, the leader of emerging markets when it comes to edtech and technology, e-learning. So looking forward to it.
Thank you, Mohammed. This brings us to the end of our panel. I'd like to ask you for final or closing remark if you have some. Courtney?
I think it's an incredible time to be an entrepreneur. It's an incredible time to be able to start a company at a relatively low cost compared to the last several decades, and the ability to go global is bigger than ever. So I just want to see more people starting companies.
Thank you, Mohammed.
If we were able to get to 30 countries bootstrapped, anyone can do it. Just put your mind to it and have the right strategy. And hopefully you're going to get there. Just have your ambition and your dreams big and try to be practical.
Thank you.
And hopefully we're going to get there.
Badr?
I think my comments maybe to founders or founders to be, especially local founders. The ambition of this country is limitless, and they need to keep up. They need to keep up and get their ambitions up there to be as global as possible. And I think ecosystem is now developed enough to kind of sustain these kind of businesses. And I am sure that we'll see these examples coming up in the next few years.
Inshallah. Thank you, Badr. Umesh, final word.
Well, I'll build on what Courtney just said, that there hasn't been a better time in human history to build businesses, build companies, entrepreneurship. This is really the moment. But on top of that, I'd also say that for technology, for innovation, for entrepreneurship, there are no borders. The world is truly flat. I mean, me being here today on the invitation of Sanabil and Badr, meeting so many great people. This is networking on steroids for me, meeting people from so many different countries, etc. And so it just, I cannot think of a better time in the last 14 years of me building Unifor. I am even more excited today with where the world is, the opportunities, the challenges, and it's the best time for being innovating for not just one country, one region, but for the whole globe at the same time.
Thank you, Umesh. Thank you for my four co-hosts. Thank you for the audience for your engagement. Thank you very much.